fire, it never melt the system. Some can help but didn't. We fill up the jails and prisons. You don't believe that's a business, only yourself you can. But now they're killing our people, it's all on television. Them cops went home to their people, turn on the television. I tell my son, careful what you learn on television. He 15, he don't know what I mean, don't know about yet. Doubt, suspect, outsets, controlled outlets from those who don't want to let us out yet. Land of the free, the home of the brave. Nah, can't let us be. We've grown from slaves. It's there if you want to read. I mean, it's all on the page. Say it's police, I just know when it's race and there's thrown in our face. Maybe I'm lost, signs are vital to me. Sandra Bland didn't come off as suicidal to me. Y'all play around thinking we on safe ground. They killed Tamir Rice and his rights right on that playground. Eric was selling cigarettes. I can't breathe. He was saying the bigger dread, he was a nigga. But listen, last year I went to church with my mother Faye. We sat behind Miss Gardner and it was Mother's Day. She sat strong inside. I cried for her. My eyes hugging the water as I was hugging his daughter. Philando Castile told him he had a weapons permit. Was murder moments after without a complexion permit. That's bloodshed with his daughter in the car. I'm only upset for our sons and daughters tomorrow. Question, how many cities we gotta march through? Signs we gotta hold up, or are they trying to provoke us? Cause when them nines load up and landmines blow up and the crime don't slow up, they'll chime in and say they told us. Or is it only a crime when done by us? Food for thought, my mind don't run off a cold cuts. Raw and evident, that was off heaven set. Recorded negligence, it make it seem as if we in y'all way. Maybe your government is governed by the NRA. That will make a disease capital. It need a capital. They even legalize for the capital. But be black, selling the street. They get mad at you, casually clap at you. It's Uncle Sam saying taxes due. Our epidemic systemic. Black Panther fist at the Olympics. They just condemn it. Said the Klan marched in Piedmont. Even worse, they were protected by police arms. And Baton Rouge is pictures of them in riot gear. And tell you they know it's plenty reason to riot there. Then we just keep on praying while still feeling it. Racism still alive, that ain't not concealing. Yes. What's going on, fellas? How is everybody doing today? We on Food for Thought. I got my brothers, I got my friends. Listen, man, they give me a hard time, so this is not going to be your average podcast, man. These are everybody in this room. To be honest with you, they're all my friends, and when you got real friends, man, they give you a hard time. So you have no idea what is happening behind the scenes. But I'm resilient. I'm here. It ain't the original background, but it's the background. We're gonna jump in there, man. I wish we had a lot of time to really get into like really in-depth how can I put this bios. But to be honest with you, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
To be honest with you, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be creative with how I kind of bring some of these brothers in, because I've been friends with them for a long time, with the exception of one, but and we'll talk about our story later, my boy Dr. Jack. But for the most part, this is my crew, man. These are my guys, and so one of the things I want to say is that all things considered, all the opinions, all the thoughts. We're going to be talking about some really difficult conversations, but for the most part, I want to be able to give out this disclaimer that, these brothers aren't representing their companies or their corporations per se with these thoughts and this conversation. I think it's important to say that just because we all work for some organizations that speak for themselves, and I don't, and when I look at these brothers, I know kind of the weight that they carry at their respective jobs. So I want to be able to just give that disclaimer. I want to welcome, from my top left to my right, to the bottom left to my right, my boy Michael Henderson. We've been friends since college. Welcome to the fold, brother. You've been with me. I think you were at my original Brothers Brunch. So I appreciate you, good brother. Welcome. My boy Jay. Welcome to the fold, man.
Appreciate
This
you.
is my guy, man.
My dude.
We've been rocking for a very long time, and I'm grateful that we got a lot of projects that are coming down the pipeline.
Yes, sir.
One in particular is Three-Way Tie podcast, so I'm hype about it.
Stay tuned.
My boy is Scared. What's going on, Doc?
What's up, man?
Yo, love Scared, man. I picked the right people for this podcast because none of these brothers mince words. We all have thoughts, and none of us are afraid to talk about them. Then I got my boy Jack, man, Dr. Manel.
Yo, this guy, interesting story. I've been following his career. He's a professor at Winston-Salem, and man, the research, his background, his social media, and the craziest things I never knew him. I just knew of him. I always followed him. And one day when I decided to start the Brothers Brunch podcast, I reached out to him. It was the blindest call I ever made, man. And I said, "Look, Doc, you may not know who I am, but I need you to be on my board." And the rest is history. So sometimes you just gotta shoot your shot, man, and I appreciate it. The last but certainly not least, my boy Chuck, man. We've been in the fold for a minute. Best man in this wedding, godfathers to each other's kids, and the list goes on and on and on. But when you talk about the realist, man, he's he's the realest person you ever want to meet. When it comes to how he feels and his opinion. So we're going to jump right in there. And we're going to talk about everything that's been happening out in the world. And I really want to, brothers, are y'all ready to have some real conversation?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Get it. Let's get it.
So listen, we realized that everything has been going on with our brother, George Floyd. And realizing that, a cop just recently, the cop recently got charged for the murder. This man had his knee on my man's neck for approximately 8 minutes, and I want to say 32 seconds. I want your initial reactions. We're going to start with Dr. Jack.
Anger, but not surprised, hardened, saddened, and everything that we're dealing with today, presently with the pandemic and everything else we deal with in our community. To wake up once again, to hear a story once again about a black male once again and a police officer. Just unfortunate, man. It just continues to reinforce my concern about our community, my concern about my sons, my concern about my students, my brothers, man, so just unfortunate, man. Just unfortunate. Anger, man. Exhaustion and anger.
Let me get the thoughts from Mike real quick. And then I'm going to go over some themes that we're going to.
I echo that sentiment. Can you hear me?
Yes,
sir.
I echo that sentiment. It's simultaneous frustration, and you're just left with the feeling that it didn't have to happen. And when you see the video, actually made me, viscerally, my heart was beating fast watching it. And I don't know if y'all had that same feeling, but my heart was beating because I could feel it. I could feel the actual finality of what was about to happen on that video. I could see it. I wasn't sure that the brother was going to get killed because I kind of saw the video on the news, but I could feel that finality hitting, and it was a visceral reaction. My heart started beating faster, and I was in a really bad space, just looking at it, and like the brother said, it's unfortunate, but it's enough to make you want to holler.
So the reality is that we're married, we have kids. Your stats are below, right? When we talk about the conversation that we're gonna have with our kids, let's talk about that. You know what I mean? Like that's, it's funny. My son got a little upset the other day. He said, "Dad, I just need to get out the house. Can I take a walk around the neighborhood?" And we live in a nice development in the suburbs. And I was like, cool. I don't have a problem with it. My wife said, "No, where are you going?" And then she asked, "Are you going with him?" And I said, "No. I mean, we're in the development. He should be good. He lived there all his life." We had a back and forth. And when it really came down to it, the conversation ended up being deeper than just him being in his neighborhood. It's the fact that Isaiah loves to wear his hoodies, right? We're plugged into everything that's happening in the world. And it was annoying that I had to have a conversation around how we protect our young 13-year-old who was innocent and just wants to take a walk around the neighborhood. So, brothers, talk to me about what conversations you're having when you're leaning in and you're talking to your wife or you're talking to your kids. And
Bro, I'll jump off with that because we had a conversation today, and I'm trying to set the stage, for my four girls. They're 18, 15, 13, and 10. And I'm realizing now because of what's happened this week, and I'm going back, right, the symbolism with the knee on the neck, you know, and Colin Kaepernick, right? I think we've seen a lot, and we'll probably get into that. I'm explaining to my 10-year-old, I'm like, oh, she wasn't even aware of what was going on with the whole Colin Kaepernick thing. So now I'm needing to go back to that moment and even further back to incidents that have happened to bring her forward and for them to get a fullness of what's happening. Also I'm in a nice suburb of Fort Worth. My girls don't know the life that I lived growing up in Brooklyn, New York, right? So, and I'm in a very different place. You know what I'm saying?
NY? What's up, NY?
Hey,
And
NY in the
BK
building.
all day.
So
BK all day.
I make sure that they understand the heritage and the progression and the sacrifices that their grandparents, their parents, you know, have made to give them the life that they have today. But in no means does that mean that they are privileged beyond being affected and impacted by the things that go on around us. So you talk about your initial impact, your initial responses. Mine was disgust. I'm looking at this and I'm disgusted by it because I'm like, here's a man in uniform. Anybody in uniform is in uniform to serve, to honor, and protect, right? And so when someone's doing the wrong thing, you know, as brothers, we're supposed to check each other, hold each other accountable. In the video, I see his brother not holding him accountable and it's like not even bothered by what's going on. So I'm like, how do I have this conversation with my daughters? And so I had to go back and have a broad conversation and then drill in, right? We'll get into more of that, but painting the picture for them is hard, man. How do I encourage my girls and where they're going to go into this world with courage and with boldness, and fear is present and looming in front of them? That's tough.
And see, you know, for me, man, my sons are older too, and I'm a Brooklynite before gentrification,
Yeah.
and my thing is, my oldest is a college student, and when he got his license, me and him used to role play on the road, and I used to be,
That's good.
I'm the a-hole officer. How do you respond? How do you do this? How do you do that? And for those unaware, I'm a criminologist by training, but I'm a hood dude, man. I've been blessed, man, to turn it all around. So I understand both sides of the fence. But my thing is, when we look at our kids, my youngest is 16, and how do we prepare them for this society of ours? And I will counter the brother real quick. The criminal justice system was never intended it was never created nor intended to benefit us. So where I'm in the justice field, ironically, I'm in it so that we can change it. But I y'all remember Brooklyn back in the 80s and the 90s. They never respected us. And that's not the police bash, because we all know, have family members, whatever, that are officers. But for me, and just like y'all, when I hear these things, I'm making sure, number one, make sure I don't know that person. And even if I don't know that person, I feel a part of me is getting ripped up, because I'm like, damn, that's me too, whether I know them or not. And I told my wife, man, I was like, yo, she's always concerned, like, when I hit, well, we don't go out now because there's nowhere to go. But, when I'm out, she's always worried, because she realizes, and she's angry now. And my wife is pretty mild-mannered, man. She's livid right now about what's going on.
Hey, Doc, can we stay there for a minute? And if you can just give our viewers a perspective of who you are. Obviously you look at your handle and it says Project Kid with PhD, right? But you have a long story, right? That a part of the reason why you do the work that you do. So can you give us, maybe like a minute or so?
Yeah. I'll give the quick elevator speech, right? 60 seconds, man. So for the viewers, man. So I grew up in the projects in Brooklyn, New York, Roosevelt houses to be exact. And I was a juvenile knucklehead, man. So I was incarcerated in my adolescent years. I spent 4 years in juvenile facilities. So I saw poverty, degradation, all of that stuff firsthand. I've experienced it. I've done it. I manifested it. Fortunately, education saved my life. So I had used that to transform my negative energies to positive and constructive energies. So for me, I put myself in these spaces, white or otherwise. And when they telling us about our community, I'm telling you, yeah, there's criminality in the hood, but why is the hood there in the first place? So my approach is, holistic in nature, but I'm not one of those silver spoon, nothing against those who are blessed. I'm not a silver spoon book theory type guy. I can do both. And for me, I take that with pride because it keeps me humble. And I tell my sons that, and Dog said it earlier, my sons are blessed, but they're humble because they know they got to work for everything. And I think all of us, I know the brothers here do it. And that's kind of my story, for those. If you want to know more, follow me and I'll tell you more.
Hey, listen.
Let me build up.
I got you.
Oh,
That's Skier, right? No, that was Mike.
That was
Mike.
But it's good.
All right, Mike, just give me 1 second. If you're just tuning in, again, this is Food for Thought, man. I'm your host, Kevon. I got my good brothers from Mike to Jay to Skier to Jack to Chuck, right? Just so you know, you're going to get various themes today. Some of them will deal with racism, microaggression, marginalization, emotional repression. One could argue fear versus freedom, our responsibilities as Black men, institutional racism, racial justice. We'll talk about white America, and we'll talk about the legal system. So if you're just tuning in, we've been talking about the recent occurrences with George Floyd, and we're just scratching the surface. So welcome, and we see your comments and we see your questions, and we will absolutely get to them. Mike.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody else want to chime in because my brother was going very heavy into the criminal stuff, and I just want to pick up right where he left off, and that's when we talk about the pain of seeing somebody that looks like us or even somebody who doesn't look like us, because you don't forget that poor and rural white folk, they catching it too. Oh, absolutely. They get there's a very large number of folks who are also caught up in the penal system and caught up in the wanton and capricious uses of power by authorities. Native Americans in the same way, Black and brown people, we've been in it for quite a minute. There's another part of this, and it's how do we get past, or how do we hold two thoughts at the same time, and that duality is not to sugarcoat and not to look past the pain that comes from that type of suffering, but also to hold the thought of how do we address the systemic parts of a system that in the first place allows for a cop to kill an individual with very little regard. And don't think for a second that cop necessarily had to be white. You have when you have a culture of a devalued human being, which is what we have right now, the training that's going on, Black people are not a part of the training. We're not being looked at as valuable, and so when you're not valued as a human being, somebody can treat you any kind of way, and that's the power of human psychology. Even though somebody looks like you, you got to remember, like throughout history. In various military settings, people who look just like the people who they're harming, you will internalize that dehumanization. And so when Black folk are dehumanized the way that we are, and it's assumed that we don't hurt the same way. There's studies that show that medical students right now honestly believe that Black skin is tougher than white skin, that the pain threshold for Black women and for Black men is higher than for white folks. And the reason why I say that you got to look out for the rural white folks too, because people don't understand, when it's just them. It's when you can just put it on them. They have to understand that this affects you too. And the racism that you got in your heart, and you may not know it's there, is going to affect you too. I'll give you two examples, and then I'm gonna leave it to everybody else to talk. The first example is the opioid epidemic. The opioid epidemic comes from racism. And what I mean by that is Black folks were being underprescribed pain meds for things that require pain meds because the thought was that we would become addicted to it and then we would become a burden on society, and they didn't want to deal with this. So they were underprescribing opioids to us and overprescribing from that same racism to people that look just like them and white folks in general. What that meant was you have this introduction of drugs that were never meant to be taken long term, and you have these folks taking those drugs long term and developing codependency. So that's number one. So that's how racism, and you can see who's being affected by the opioid epidemic. We can talk about the crack epidemic and some other ways in which people have changed their tune. But the other side of how that affects them is gun violence. So again, you have generally white men who want to arm themselves, and they want to talk about freedoms and Second Amendment and things like that, and that's all well and good. But what folks will never tell you, and the reason why they don't want to have studies that are published, in large journals and in magazines that talk about white men are killing themselves with those same guns. The suicide rate for white men in those rural communities all across the country is astronomical, but we don't talk about it because that would change the narrative. So as long as it's us, as long as it's the Black folks, you can get past these various types of policies and things like that. So we just got to rethink about what is it in our society that allows for a cop to kill a Black male in broad daylight with impunity. Just that's where we need to focus, and we focus on the pain too, but we got to think about that part as well.
Absolutely. While we're with you real quick, I got you, Chuck. Mike, just give them your background real quick. Of course, you're an attorney and you're a researcher, but if you could just let the people know where you work, what you do.
Sure. My background is basically in policy and in healthcare. I'm a lawyer by training, but I'm also a scientist by training. My focus has always been on the health and well-being of people that are the least of these, the vulnerable populations. So I focus on drug addiction. I focus on, tax policies, but I also focus on, the spatial nature of racism. So I'm also a geographer. And, racism is a spatial idea that it's all about who belongs where and under what circumstances. You don't have to think about complex things when you talk about racism. Just think about every time you see something racist or you think something is racist, just boil it down to two simple concepts. Racism is about who belongs where and under what circumstances. The brother that was killed, he was killed because of who he was, what he looked like, and where he was. And somebody was trying to send a message that you don't belong in our space. That's what racism is, and in its most fundamental, essence. That's what it is.
That's good. So Mike and Chuck happen to be the two friends I have that are the most private. So getting them on platforms is a pretty big deal. Yeah, they're laughing because I'm serious. They are two meaningful brothers. They do the work, but they never need to be in front of the camera. Or it's funny. Chuck will come to any time that I'm feeding the homeless or doing something for the community. He's there. When it comes to pomp and circumstance, he's good. So Chuck, your thoughts?
So Mike hit on something that really, I guess, in my churchy terms as a pastor, it pricked my spirit and it got me thinking. There has been, and I'll speak for me, I'm not speaking for anybody else. There has been a lack in the reaffirming of value. And what I mean by that, when I saw everything that happened, what's been happening, I was frustrated, but I was also frustrated with myself because growing up, you had those uncles, quote unquote, in the Black neighborhood. It's like, oh, I got Uncle Jack, Uncle Askia, Uncle Jay, Uncle Kev, Uncle Mike, who will, in addition, or who will speak as a male voice, or you have aunties who will speak and reaffirm your value and your importance to society. And my frustration, secondly, was with myself because I was having a conversation with one of my sisters and one of the clergy members of my church. And I told her I was frustrated with myself because there are a group of young men at my church who I've not had this conversation with. They call me PC, Pastor Chuck. They call me Unc. But I've not had these real life conversations. Some of them have fathers in the home, some of them don't. But I realized that I've had those reaffirming male voices in my life to kind of keep me on a certain path and to speak life and give me those tools I need in order to navigate through life. Hey, this is how you act when police are around. This is how you treat women. This is how you treat your fellow brother and sister. So I think for me, part of it is because we have accumulated these degrees and we've quote unquote moved ourselves into the suburbs. We've left I can knock on your door and get some sugar, or Mr. Jack can tell you to go in the house because your mom called you, or your dad, Mr. Skia knows your dad, so you better not do X, Y, and Z. So for me, it's a lack of reaffirming of value for our colored people and those who aren't colored who are dealing with struggles in life. So
No,
that's
that's
my
good.
piece.
I want to talk briefly, if we can switch gears, because we kind of mentioned it, but not really mentioned it, and I don't want to really gloss over anything, right? So let's talk about this notion of privilege. You know, I don't remember what rapper said it, but he said, "I got out the hood to make a way, not to break away," right? And when I look at everybody on this screen, we, for the most part, have kind of like moved out the hood, right? And so for whatever reason, we've made great lives for ourselves, and our kids definitely don't have the same lives that we had. Jack, I know you can speak to that, right? And so when we, you know, when I look at Jay, when I look at Chuck, when I look at Ski, like I know all of you personally, so I know that we're operating in this level of privilege. So I guess one of the things, and Ski, if you don't mind jumping in,
Yep.
that I want to know is like, what's the responsibility that you think we have? You know, now that I mean, this may not be close to home, but
Yep.
so we can have opinions, right? But
Yeah.
this is not happening necessarily in our neighborhoods.
So interesting enough, I'm from New York as well. And as many people know, I moved to Jersey, and living in Jersey, you can live in a nice neighborhood, but if you drive 5 or 7 miles away, you in the hood. The hood is still right there. So it's still very real for me in essence. But privilege is a real thing, right? And I'll just start with a story where the other day I asked my daughter, I said, you know, do you really understand the life that you have? And she looked at me and she said, yes, I know I'm privileged. Oh, I know I have it good. And I had to like explain to her, like, you can't take that for granted. So I mentor every Saturday in the poorest neighborhood in the South Bronx. I make sure that I actually take her with me so she can understand that privilege and understand, listen, this is right next to us. So you can't just go to walk through life and just think that it can never hit us, that you can't think that we can't end up back there, right, at the end of the day. But it's extremely difficult. So, you know, it's trying to find that balance of, yeah, you're privileged and I want you to live a certain way, but we're not that far removed because it's still next door. So we need to always give back and do things like that. But it's difficult. It's difficult to say that.
Absolutely. So we got a lot of questions, and I want to make sure, Jay, you about to say something?
Feedback.
Yeah.
Oh, for me?
There's some feedback on the line. I don't know if everybody can hear it.
All right. Yeah, I do hear it, Lord. Is this better?
No.
All right, can you still hear it?
That's better.
We can hear you though.
Yeah, just keep it moving.
Y'all brothers, man. Y'all about to go in. Actually, somebody's
Somebody playing the tuba.
Something's going on over there. You know, y'all in these little fancy neighborhoods, man. Somebody probably outside being expressive.
Hey, point of clarification. I still live in the city of Winston. I don't live in the burbs, man.
It don't matter. Okay, show us your yard, man. We ready.
Because y'all would clown me if I showed you what they look like in the back, yo.
Yo, listen. So we got a couple questions, man. Clinton Robinson. First of all, we got people as far as Florida, all over, and so just thank you for tuning in. I think in the upwards of 50 people following right now. Dr. Clinton Robinson Jr. Said, great conversation, but can you also speak to the educational impact of being informed? Anybody can jump in on that one.
Can you state the question real quick more? It's okay. I just want to be
It's a
sure.
great conversation, but can you also speak to the educational impact of being informed? It's
Clarify that a little
almost
bit.
like
Yeah, I need some clarity.
the same,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So give us some clarity, Dr. Clinton. We got a heavy one, and you all may not be able to read this, so I'll read it. Hey, brotherhood, I appreciate all of you. I am a sister of a sibling who went to prison at the age of 15 years old, February 26, 1976, who was with other childhood friends, all high on drugs. The other youths also did 5 years, who turned and lied on him because of a family member who was in the Philadelphia Police Department as a homicide detective. It's so many factors in this story. However, my brother Andre was released on February 26, 2020. I have been visiting him.
Wow.
Okay.
So I'll try to read the rest of it. I think that's what she basically
That's what
wanted
she
to throw
wrote.
out there.
What?
It's not,
Can I
it's
chime
not
in real
question.
quick, Cap?
Absolutely.
It sounds like it was more of a point, I guess. Or
Yep.
what was her name again, Kev? Did like her handle or whatever?
She goes by Lily Blacksmith.
Okay. Right. Of course. Yeah. So for Lily, man, hey sis, listen, man. You didn't give us too much on the back end. You gave us the backstory. So my point to you would be, I was locked up for 4 years, and the one thing that helped me a little bit, well, a lot, was the educational piece, but then secondly, having a support system. So if you're his support system, I would encourage you to continue to be that beacon of light for the brother, and I mentor, I communicate. I don't like to use terminologies, but individuals who were incarcerated. I don't do offenders. I don't do inmates. I don't do convicts. But if my IG handle is on here, if you reach out to me, we could talk more offline about maybe some of the trials and tribulations the brother's enduring, and make sure that maybe we could work to try to get him plugged up and move on with his life.
Okay. We're gonna invite Mike back in. He was in the green room. My bad, brother.
All good.
That's a pretty fancy chair.
Y'all got snacks
We
in
were just
the
talking
green
about
room.
privilege, so did you want to jump in here?
We got snacks in the green room. I will say this. When people talk about incarceration, I thought that was an excellent point from my brother. Just talking about incarceration. One of the things that I think is going to always be an interesting topic, especially for people who have been the victims of crime and been either committed what might be a crime, and we want to re-welcome those folks back into the community. One of the questions that's always going to be around is, why are we incarcerating these people in the first place, right? And so that's not to say that crimes aren't being committed and you don't need to have penalties for transgressions, but you got to think about it. There's something amiss when you incarcerate the amount of people that we incarcerate in America. We do more than any other country, any other industrialized nation. Are we more criminal than those people? The question you always have to ask yourself is, why are we imprisoning so many people? And when you think about the vast majority of those crimes, you're talking about drug offenses, right? And you're talking about how a society has wanted to make sure that a certain part of the population is kind of excommunicated from polite society. And so it's a purposeful thing. And that's when you start realizing that it's a purposeful thing, it changes your whole dynamic about how you feel about incarceration. And so, when you start talking about the abolitionist movement and people who are about trying to get rid of jails and try to get rid of incarceration, they're not saying that you don't penalize people. What we're saying is, what would the world have to look like for us to not need jails anymore? And what I mean by that is, if we had healthy diets, and we lived in places where we weren't being exposed to lead and things like that, then you don't have the type of mental and health issues that you have, coming out of these urban environments. Meaning that, one of the major results of people who have been exposed to lead is developmental issues. Those people with developmental issues also have a tough time in school. People who have a tough time in school get incarcerated. The one of the biggest factors that's going to tell you whether somebody's going to be incarcerated or not is whether they can read. And so if you can't read and you've been already shunted to the side and relegated to the trash bin, then you already are queued up for a life in imprisonment. So abolitionists are asking the question, what would have to be there so that two individuals get into a fight in New York and their first inclination is not to kill each other or try to harm each other? That comes from coping skills. That comes from having psychotherapy in your community so people can talk things out. That comes from having jobs and things like that. So I'm not feeling so worthless because I can't provide for families that I'm so on edge that if somebody pushes me, I'm already on the edge. You know what I'm saying? That's what abolitionists are talking about. What will the society have to look like that we don't need jails anymore? And that's a healthy society. And we're not there. America is not there. No matter how much we talk about what we got.
So can I
it's not profitable.
real quick on that topic? The thing about jails, I know a lot of people just think they just want to lock us up, but the reality, jail's a big business. They make a ton of money from free labor. I have friends that are in jail, and when I pick up the phone and call them, it might cost me $5 a minute to call. So
it's intentional.
Much money off of jails, and that's really why the jails are there, right?
Yes, sir. It's capitalism.
Yeah.
It's intentional.
Listen, brothers, we're gonna switch gears a lot this evening, but I want to talk about anger, right? This pinned up anger and this notion of emotional repression, right? And I want to talk about, like, I guess, we're going to get there at some point tonight, but we need to talk about solutions. And you've all mentioned it inadvertently of how we're walking around a little angry and a little upset and a little pissed off by everything that's going on. And so how do we deal with that? Because every time it happens, it does something to our spirits, right? Like every year we're going to experience this in some way, shape, or form. So it's building up, it's building up, it's building up. And now police 3rd precinct out in Minneapolis up in flames, right? And so when you talk about and I want to really dig deep in terms of protest and what that means, and I want to get into a comment that Colin Kaepernick recently made, and I'll get your thoughts on that. But I want to really start with this notion of anger and this emotional repression, and how every time something like this happens in our communities, we're walking around carrying this. And I want to know how you feel about it, and what do we do about it as men?
Hey, yo, Kev. So as one, so I was clinically trained a long time ago, and you therapists, when I used to do my therapy stuff, my clinical advisor at the time used to always say, we used to have our individual sessions, and she'd be like, let it out, right? Mm-hmm. Culturally speaking, everybody in this room, in one way or another, was brought up, particularly as men. You fall off the bike, don't wince, don't cry, get up. The dude beat you up, you better not cry, go out there, beat him up.
Suck it up.
If emotionally, if you experience some trauma, don't whine about it. That is life, So for me, oftentimes, when we talk about like masculinity and hegemony and things of that nature, we've been conditioned to be workhorses with no emotion. And I think for me, and I'm super strong. I've endured a lot, but most recently, I told my wife, I told some of the bros, some of my people, some of my friends, I'm not good. And then of course we're inside, so I'm not going to the gym. It's like all my outlets are not available. And I think when we look at that from a community perspective, we got to do better. If you're religious, I know we got Brother Pastor on. Some entities be like, we don't go to therapy. That's what white folk do.
Right.
And you know what? No, because let me tell you something. If I need to speak to somebody, I don't care who's gonna listen as long as they're credible, right? So for me, we need to work within our community. All these deaths we're seeing, that's constant trauma, man. So like for me, every day, like I'm just like, shucks, enough. And that wears on you. It's like everybody in it, most of us are from New York. So y'all remember how it was growing up.
Yeah.
Dodging the bullets and the crack valves on the streets and the needles on the streets. We grew up with that, and then we processed it. We moved forward. We got educated, and we're doing well. And now we're successful. And we still worried about this systemic institution that is never intended to benefit us anyway, and trying to navigate those spaces. I'm gonna tell you, we got to do better as a community.
That's good. We do. So you mentioned it systemically, right? The next question is, what can we do to systemically gear Black families to protect and prosper in the next 50 years? So they hey, the folks want to know. Like,
they want to solve. We're gonna solve it. We're gonna solve it right now.
Right.
We got the answer. Glad you tuned in. We got the answer.
Yeah. Nobel Peace Prize stuff. Nobel Peace Prize stuff.
Hey. Let me. Who's about to get it? Go ahead.
I'll jump in on this one because the question earlier about we moved out of the hood, etc. For me, once I started having kids and then having more kids and then having more kids and now 4 kids, I'm like, my priorities shifted. Growing up, I had vision. Now it's shifting full circle. I had vision to build up my area, my community. Where I grew up in Canarsie section of Brooklyn, Bayview houses, there was a big empty lot. Right, it was a big empty lot. There was nothing there. We used to go act like we was paratroopers and stuff in there growing up, right in the lots. And then about the gentrification started, but it didn't hit that area yet. But they changed that into fields, baseball fields. So I was like, okay, I wanted to build a youth center over there and all kinds of stuff. So as I left and I went to school, I always wanted to go back and do that. As I started to having kids, growing up in a household where my dad wasn't present, my mind was like, okay, and this is going to tie into the question. I need to focus on my family first. I need to establish my family. I need to give my girls the dad that I didn't have, the mother and father that I didn't have consistently growing up. And I need to be an example of that, because if I don't focus on that, then I'm part of the problem for the next generation. So I chose to focus on my family. Let me get them right while I develop my skills, while I pour into them. And then as we all mature and they go out, now I can go back and do my community work and continue that effort, right? And then leverage how I've raised my family to be able to teach others. So you talk about, well, what the families need to do. I think families need to, first of all, do as much as they can to stay whole and to remain together. And it's really about a selfless love. Like, there's a lot of things that I wanted to do with my life at different points, and just kept having kids. Is like my priorities started to shift. Kids are a blessing. They never hindered me from doing anything, but a mature mind says, what do I need to prioritize first? So I think it's first, as far as family, one takeaway I would say, purpose, and identifying and discovering your purpose as an individual, the God-given gifts and abilities and experiences that you have, and then teaching your kids that same thing, trying to get them to discover their purposes and their gifts sooner than later. So when they go out into the world, they're not spinning around and wasting 10, 20, 30 years like some of us have, because they're trying to figure it out. So I think it starts from inside, knowing who you are, and then going out and being able to express that in the world.
That's good. Appreciate it. A couple comments. I mean, it's on fire out here, so I'll just keep it coming. More than a little angry, we're not good, we're not okay. That's been a very consistent theme that I've been hearing a lot from a lot of people. The air is thickening our community, irrespective of degrees or mortgages, are at a point where we are so volatile that do the right thing is right around the corner. How do we maintain? And if all you can recall Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, I mean, none of this is new, right? Mm-hmm. None of this is new. Yeah. It's just generation after generation we continue to find ourselves in these positions.
Yeah, I can I come in? Or you going?
Sure.
Yeah, so I just want to go back to that point about what we can do to get ourselves to a point where we can deal with what we're doing. So one of the things that scientists are starting to really come to grips with is how much stress can your body take. And this is a theory. You guys can Google it. It's a theory called the allostatic load, right? So the allostatic load is a way of saying that on a cellular level, where your DNA is involved, your body can only take so much, right? It's sick and tired of being sick and tired. So you got these little things in your cells called alleles, and they tell a story of your genes. And so your body has this allostasis, this ability to maintain hardship. And what we're learning is not only take the stress that you on a daily basis, but you're internalizing the stress from your forefathers, from your mother, from your grandmother. We're internalizing all of that stress, and it's actually changing our genes. And so, some point, there's only so much that our body can take. And so, when we are just dealing with the regular day to day, if we had a healthy diet and we had no stress, we'd already be, dealing with sunlight and cancer and all this other stuff. But when your body has to deal with cancer and it's got to fight, the stress of the day, and you gotta, fight off the environment that you're in, and you gotta fight
And you
off,
don't have health insurance.
and you don't have health insurance, and you got this, that, and the third. When that all hits, your body goes into shutdown mode, and it says, well, look, I can only do so much. I'm gonna put all the emphasis on this and not this other thing, and it rewires the way that our body works. So our body is geared towards having stress responses. Back when we were out in the field and in the jungle, that stress response where we need to get the heck away from a lion, right? A lion coming at you, or a wild dog coming at you, or a man that got a spear is coming at you. You got to be able to dip and dot. We're living with so much stress that it's like we got lions chasing us on a daily basis. Our bodies ain't made for this. Our bodies are not made to be able to take that kind of stress on a daily basis. So when you talk about, how do we deal with the next 50 years and getting ourselves right, a lot of it is self-care. A lot of it is self-care. We got to start doing the things that make our bodies healthy. That means diet. That means exercise. That means having social interactions with people you love. That means, getting re-engaging with people. That means getting on a spiritual level. That means, engaging with the God above, or the spirit that you chase. That means a lot of different things that means that your body can weather the normal stress that's going on, because it's already out here. It's wearing us down. If the brother wasn't killed with a knee on his neck, he might have been killed just a couple days later with COVID-19, right? So it's that bad, and that's the reason why COVID-19 has that effect on our community. It's our bodies are under so much stress just in a given day, that when COVID-19 comes in, or any of these other insults to our body come in, we can't deal with them. So that's the last little thing I'll try to add to that.
No, I appreciate your thoughts, Mike, and I got a lot of questions. I still need to ask you, brothers, man. In the green room, we already put it out there, man. This is like we had one of our cribs around the fire pit, so we just gonna keep it going. And I understand somebody has a hard stop at an hour. Jay,
Yep.
we definitely had somebody wanted to comment on where you were. There was a question out there that I'll have to bring it in at some point, but they wanted to know how. So Javen, how does that happen for families that are torn apart and no fundamental values are present? So you recall what you just said.
Yeah, that's tough, and it starts with one person. So for me, I was aware. It starts with awareness and exposure. I was aware of growing up that some just ain't right, because pain is present. There's indicators, and there were triggers for me. So as I grew up and I left, I started looking for answers. I didn't have all the answers, but I had the pain. I was like, I don't want to feel that again. So it takes life experiences. It takes things. I think it just takes one person. Now, that person doesn't necessarily have to be a father. That person doesn't have to be a mother. That person doesn't have to be an adult. I have a very influential 10-year-old in my midst that I know is going to be a CEO of something or everything at some point. So it takes just the person who is aware that something has to change. But I think that's right. Families that are torn apart, no foundational values are present. Somebody has to be the person to identify something has to change, and then a change agent has to go in the you know mode.
Yeah.
So, oh, you still there? Okay. Can I just jump in? Of course.
Go ahead, Chuck.
You know,
Sure.
the thing that jumps out to me, and Jack, you mentioned it, Jay, you mentioned it. You hit on it too, Mike. For me, it's support, and I'm gonna just use scripture because that's what I do.
Go ahead,
The Bible says in Ephesians, it says the body is fitly joined together, compacted by that which each joint supplieth. And for me, that's just support. Like, we have to understand that we all play a role in each other's lives. I wouldn't be, in a moment of transparency, I wouldn't be who I am now if it weren't for Askia. Like, me and Askia in college, we were homeboys. I understand that he played an important role for me and in our families, in our communities. We have to understand that we are placed there, even in our rural areas. I mean, our suburban areas now, we're placed there for a purpose, just like you said, Jay. But how do I fit in to the whole of the betterment of my community, whether it be where I'm living now, whether it be the Black community? Where do I fit? Go ahead, Jack.
This is just that, but see, that level of vulnerability and transparency and bigging up your brother, that's what we lack in our community oftentimes.
Talk about it.
Like you're saying, yo, if it wasn't for him, yo, who knows? We get caught up in the frenzy of, I don't need him, or what, we have this saying, lifting as we climb. I'm no good as if I'm climbing and I can't reach back. That's all I want to say. Keep doing your thing, Chuck. Yeah.
So for me, the biggest thing for the next 50 years, and I was talking to my mom and dad a few weeks ago, and they were talking about how everything was in the 60s, the Black Panther movement, in Philly, the influence of our Muslim brothers and sisters in the community, even in Philly now. Like, being Muslim is I would say it's the leading religious space in Philly. And for me, what my parents were talking about was the unity that was shown in those times. And right now we're so fractured, and because of us being fractured, I'm worrying about me and my family. As long as my 3 girls and my wife are good, I'm cool. Kev, like, I love you, but I mean, are you fine? You're breathing? Okay, cool. Mike, I mean, you're an attorney, so you're automatically going to be fine. It's like, nah, let's have some discussions, because the Bible also says iron sharpens iron. We need to have these type of not even platforms, these conversations in our homes, with our aunts, with our family members, with our friends, in order to make sure that the structure of the community is strong and can withstand everything we're dealing with. We're doing a good job, but we're fracturing, we're breaking, and understandably so, we're breaking, but it's just a reminder that we have to do more work in order to strengthen and unite as a body, in order to overcome this systemic racism, economic depression, like the whole nine. But
I see a question for you, but I just wanted to chime in on your point. I think it's exactly right. We have to be, in a space where we are looking out for our community in ways that we've never done before. Right now we are under a environment that is just not conducive to life. It's not conducive to well-being. We are under constant threat. We are under constant insult. But I will say this: when you want a plane and that air bag come down, what they always tell you, make sure yours is straight, so that before you try to help somebody else. Because you got to understand that while and that has so many different meanings, and I don't quote the airline industry a whole lot, but that is one point that I take. And what I mean by that is, you got to make sure that what you're spewing out is from a healthy place. When you start helping people and you're not good, the stuff that's coming out your mouth ain't from God. It's not healthy. You know what I'm saying? You just saying things, but it's not coming from a healthy space. So you got people wanna, they want to genuinely help you, but they may not be in a space where they can actually help you. The stuff they telling you may not actually be healthy. You got to actually make sure that your stuff is right, because number one, you can help other people. Number two, if you're healthy and somebody is coming in with that negativity, with that stuff that ain't right, the stuff that's not from God, the stuff that's not from the spirit, the stuff that is not from a black healthy space, that might mess up what you got going in your family and things like that. So you got to be strong enough to withstand the stuff that is not actually from the spirit and is not actually with your well-being in mind. So you got to take care of self. Number one, and self is your immediate, meaning your family, your children,
right.
the ones, the dependents, the people who need you. You got to take care of that core, but you got to take care of self, meaning you too, you
right.
being you.
Yes,
because we walk around as Black folk, we walk around with a lot of trauma and we don't realize it. We walking around hurt. Yeah. We are hurt up. We are hurt. Like the sister said, we are not good. We are not good because we are in a constant state of somebody, trying their best. I mean, think about, there are people who wake up every day and they are trying to make your life miserable. That is, when you think about that is crazy. You know what I'm saying? Karen is out here calling the cops on people, in Central Park, somebody is minding their own business.
Yeah.
But somebody is so unhappy. And this is the other part. Remember what I told you before? These unhealthy practices hurt them too. And what I mean by that is what happened to that woman's dog? She was so messed up. She was so messed up that she was hurting the dog, man. Yep. She was hurting the dog. That's how messed up her spirit was. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you gotta, you gotta deal with. If they gotta deal with theirs, and they gotta deal with ours. James Baldwin said, I am not your nigga, right? I am not him. I'm a black man. I knew that when I woke up this morning. Why did you need to create a nigga? That's what James Baldwin said. What was going on in that you had to create a nigga to belittle? And that nigga has not always been a black man, right? That nigga was an Irishman. That nigga was a Italian man not too long ago. That nigga was somebody from the Caucasus Mountains not too long ago. Don't forget about that. The nigga changed it, right?
Right.
So
listen. I need Pastor Chuck to answer this question. And Dr. Jack, I think you want to respond to something regarding privilege. So right at the Chuck.
Okay, really quick. So what do you feel the church's stance should be? And this may be a little controversial.
Speak on it, Chuck. Speak on it.
Let's go, Chuck.
You act like we surprised.
I don't believe it is.
Hold on. Let me take a sip from my mason jar. Let me
go ahead.
Everybody
Hey.
I understand the question and the heart behind it and the purity behind it. But here it is for me. I don't believe it is a church stance thing. I believe my brother Askia is a devout Muslim, has been for years in college, devout. I don't think it's about church or a mosque. It's about humanity at its core. Our stance should be, this is humanity. I have my religious beliefs. My brother Askia has his religious beliefs. We should be able to sit down, plan, and I don't want to say attack, but strategize and implement something to affect our community in a positive manner. Not because Saint Church or this I'll just use my church name. The TAB in Randallstown is doing this, and the mosque around the corner is doing this. Hey, let's come together. This is our community. At the end of the day, the church's stance should be, or the pastor's stance should be, let me find those other religious leaders in our community. Let's get together and let's figure out how to effectively empower and strengthen our community, because I can't do it. My church can't do it by itself. Askia's mosque can't do it by himself. But when we get together, remove all religious boundaries. Yes, we believe differently, but we also believe that human life is important. The community, the families, regardless of color, but we are all brothers. So the African American brothers, the African American sisters, our communities are important, but the church's stance, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about our religious leaders gathering together in unity and coming up with a strategy to better our community. So I'll release it there. My brother Askia, love you, bro. Chime in, bro. I know I've been spitting a lot of Bible around here, but go ahead.
Hey.
Listen, I'm with you on that. It's all about unity. I always go back to the phrase, it takes a community, right? Without the community, you have nothing. But even most important, it starts with the youth, right? If you want to change things over the next 50 years, you can't start with us. You got to start with the youth, those kids that are in elementary, junior high, and you affect that change over the years. And then in 50 years, you start to see that. Just an example of something that we do for the community service that I do in the Bronx is we're doing virtual mentoring during the COVID, but we're requiring that the parents get on, because right now they don't got no excuse. You home, you need to be part of this session. So get on the Zoom with us. And for the parents to see the change that their kids are going through by going through this mentoring and seeing how they're doing better in school, how it's not just about school, how we're talking to the kids about the emotion that they're experiencing with people in their family dying. That's how you have that impact and start to have that change. You start with the youth and you continue to build out. Everybody should be volunteering in some way, shape, or form. And that's how you bring everybody together.
Absolutely. Jack.
So just to step back real quick, one of the questions had to do with privilege, white privilege in the educational system, and the misrepresentation of educational prowess and success. So oftentimes, everybody probably, you all should remember, but when we spoke correct English and when it was proper diction and things, that was like acting white, talking white, being white. And oftentimes, when you were educated, we as a community oftentimes didn't support it. We clowned the smart kid. That wasn't cool. That wasn't wow. That wasn't, all the adjectives that countered it is what we focused on. And so we talk about how do we change, how do we impact? Ski and Chuck just mentioned it. It is with the youth, but we have to ultimately, education is key, y'all. So we got to make sure that these young men, these young ladies, these kids, while they're sponges, they're learning the proper history, not that Columbus crap. But they got to understand that we come from kings, from kingdoms, and someone alluded to the Caucasus Mountains. We weren't enslaved, we were enslaved. Our ancestors were scientists, doctors, everything that you can imagine. They need to know their history. What happens is you remove that history, and I'll give you one further. In Texas, right now, I think Jay's in Texas. In Texas, they removed slavery from the textbooks. Texas Instruments, which publishes the textbooks in the K-12 system in Texas, they removed slavery because it showed this country in a negative light. So these kids grow up thinking slavery, like your boy, the HUD guy said, we just jumped on a ship and came to this country voluntarily. Man, that's the misinformation that we are providing. So we got to counter that. We got to empower our communities through education.
Let me get on that for one second. I'm just make this one point. So I think that's exactly right. I think part of arming ourselves for the environment that we're in is self-knowledge. I recommend going to a HBCU near you if you are going to be going to college. But
Jay, did you say something, Jay?
Would you say,
brother?
Did you say something?
No, I ain't say nothing. I ain't going to no HBCU, brother.
That's all right. That's all right.
Wait, what?
That's all right.
I stand on mine. UD represent. It's all good. Like what?
That's all right.
You gonna call brother out like that? We in the building.
It's all right. You came to our parties. You good.
Yeah,
I did. That's a whole nother subject. We can go there. We ship
honorary.
You know what I mean?
Go ahead, Mike.
One of the things that when we talk about history is Angela Davis talks about having a vocabulary, part of the to get rid of this obsolete vocabulary that we have, and part of that is when we talk about slavery, and we talk about slavery as if it's this thing that started and stopped. and we don't understand that slavery is very much a part of what we are as America. It's as American as apple pie. It is what built, the capitalist society that we have. It is where the wealth came from when the Industrial Revolution was happening in Europe. That's where the wealth came from, right? That's where all those fancy buildings came from, right? When you're not paying for labor, that allows you to really do some fly stuff. You know what I'm saying? You could buy some really fly stuff when you're not paying for labor. Anybody ever had some work done on their house? You ever have some work done and on your bathroom or something, and you ain't had to pay to do? Imagine what kind of fly stuff you would have had in your bathroom if you ain't had to pay somebody. So America has been in a position where they have built a lot of wealth off of people that look just like us, right? And so when you start teaching that history is uncomfortable for people because America likes to learn things about George Washington like he had a cherry tree. What are you talking about? What do you talk? Lincoln freed the slaves, as if the slaves were these passive beings that just kind of sat back and were just looking, with that look, like, just waiting for what I'm saying. You got milk, like, if you can't teach that history and you don't know that history, you're gonna have a pathology. It's as simple as that. If you don't know where you are coming from, you're gonna have a pathology. So the thing that you definitely want to do, part of that self-care that I was talking about, part of that self-care is a self-knowledge. It is understanding from whence you come. And if you don't know, and if you there's the internet. If you ain't got the internet, it's the books. If it's not the books, you gotta get up with somebody like my brother over here, Jack, and all of them, and just have conversations like this. And you gotta start talking about it again. We gotta start relearning the stories of ourselves. We gotta be careful the kind of language we use. When you start talking about the slaves, he freed the slaves. Those were human beings. Those were people. And we kind of get into this view of romanticizing the slave life, romanticizing the death of our ancestors. Those people wanted to live. They didn't want to be no picture that we put up, no movie that we learn about ourselves through. We learn about that we kings and queens because our ancestors died. They wanted to live. They wanted to dance. Good. They wanted to sing. They wanted to see their children grow up. Don't romanticize that death. That was stolen from those people. That was stolen from us.
Hey, yo, Mike, this is one of my favorite quotes that I have it on my door at the gig on the yard by Baldwin, one of my favorites, right? So Baldwin always says, the paradox of education is precisely this, that as one begins to become more conscious, one begins to examine the society in which it is being educated. And that's where we're at right now. When we look, that's what we like you said, the younger kids and some of the elders are being reawakened. Like, wow, we didn't know this, and it's empowering.
What's up, King in the background? I see you, King.
Yo, hey, Jack. That was
where
my mind was going, because
that's it right there.
When we get into a space, and I'll speak for myself. My dad is a history buff. Growing up, I'm like, dude, I don't care. Like, for me, history class was a grade. And the problem is, a lot of times we're going to school, my age and any younger generation, it's just like, hey, I'm just getting this grade to continue on, not to unlock who I am. Because I'm just here, let me get my A, let me get my B, let me get out of here. African-American history, let me do what I need to do to get my grade to move on, not to become self-aware of who I really am. I'm a king, I'm a queen, and understanding the history behind my DNA, because my DNA doesn't stop with dad or mom. It continues to go on. And a lot of times, and I'll speak for myself again, for me, history was just a grade. My dad would try to sit me down and have conversations, and son, your great-great-grandparents down in Virginia, worked on this plantation. We would take vacations down to family land. And for me, I'm like, I'm a city kid. Like, where's the basketball? Give me this dirt court and I'm fine. Like, oh yeah, that's cotton over there, but it's no context for me. It didn't really hit me until I got older and took history seriously, because it was just a story to me, because I just wanted the grade instead of realizing who I was. So I'm with you, Jack. Like that unlocking mentally is key. And we
All right,
have
brothers.
to work to, I feel like, oh, my bad, Kev. We have to work to unlock them more, because it just as a rusty lock, it's just getting rustier and rustier. And we have to work that key in order to unlock it, because we're not continuing to oil it and give it the attention it needs. So when the key of knowledge comes in, the unlocking of who these children are, who our young children are, can be unlocked and manifest into who they are called to be. But go ahead, Kev. I'm done.
No, so listen. I know we all can probably go on, right? For another hour. But I want Jay and Askia to chime in on something Colin Kaepernick recently wrote. And I know, Jay, you sent me a powerful image where on the left you had the cop's knee on George's neck, and on the right you had Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, right? And so he recently wrote something on his Instagram that said, when civility leads to death, revolting is the only logical reaction. The cries for peace will rain down, and when they do, they will land on deaf ears, because your violence has brought this resistance. We have the right to fight back. What are your thoughts on that?
My first thoughts on that is the hypocrisy in leadership and people that look at that and don't recognize the fact that America was born out of revolt and revolution. And so,
and Black Death, right?
I mean, it's like when you just I'm looking at the fact of there was a whole people group that came here, stole land. It was ugly. All of that happened because they didn't like the situation that they were in. Now you change the history books, and they forget the history too, because they ain't being taught in the right way. And so now what you have is this story that's trying to be portrayed in modern days, that, you know, the civility. I love that piece, that we should not be up in arms or outraged about certain things. This goes back to the anger question. When there's so much pent up anger and frustration, you have no outlet. You feel like you have no voice. That boils and that explodes, right? So I think it's just a hypocritical thought to think. And when I think about that imagery, it's like you're really offended. And I had this conversation with my family today at the table with the girls. You're really offended by someone that was taking a peaceful protest, a peaceful protest to bring awareness to this situation, but someone else is taking a knee on someone's neck. They die, and you're not up in arms about that. So it just shows you, man, the mindset that people have. And it's just a really jacked up place that we're in right now, man.
All right, so want to jump in there. This last statement sparks a lot of other conversations with regards to the folks out there that are saying that, look, all lives matter, right? But particularly when people, you know, I think we all can say we can celebrate that Black Lives Matter. So, you know, thank you for your comment, Stephanie. But I want to kind of flip it and ask you all what your thoughts are when people say all lives matter. As a direct counter of you promoting or someone promoting Black Lives Matter.
All right.
So I'll tell you straight. You know, I work in a predominantly white field. I'm in finance, and luckily I'm not in the office now to hear people's opinions of what's going on right now. Right. But they say that all the time. Hey, everyone life matters. But my biggest thing is that being Black, I've always grown up in being sort of sympathetic to anyone dying, right? Like Chuck said, I look at it as this is humanity and you shouldn't treat people this way. But when it comes to us, everyone distances themselves from us when things get hard. So I'm at a point now where I don't care about nobody else's life. I care about my people, and that's my focus. Right? That's not to mean that I'm going to go out and threaten your life. But hey, if you're going through police brutality, you need to sit over there and go through it on your own, because you're not part of our movement over here while we're going through it. Because if you were, it's probably less likely that we're going to go through this. And I say that to my Indian folks, you know, my Spanish folk, you know, everyone else in this country that are considered minorities. Where they at? There's a few tokens out there, but where are they? Right?
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Askia. This is the Askia we know.
Yeah. The conversation about to get real raw and real now.
Let's
but,
go.
you know,
Let's
I'm
go.
about to.
I
I'm
mean,
about to.
and to take it one step further, those black privileged folks, because I know a lot of them.
Preach.
You know,
Say that louder for them folks in the
right?
back, yo.
Because you got this group of people that's just like, hey, I moved away. I live in this neighborhood. I don't got to worry about that. Oh, but believe so, when this thing bursts into a flame, oh, you're gonna be part of it. And if you're not, you're gonna be like OJ. You hung out to dry. So that's my. I'll leave it there.
I got a question for you, brothers. We got to turn it up a notch just because I want to be cognizant of your time. I'm going to ask you this one question, and the only way you can answer it is yes or no. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yes.
That was it.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. We won.
Jay, are you willing to die?
Yes.
Chuck, are you willing to die?
Yes.
Mike, are you willing to die? It's hard for him. He got questions. Come on, litigator.
Yes.
Scare, are you willing to die?
Absolutely.
Doc, are you willing to die?
We all die, brother. Yes.
Brothers, like,
got a
do
choice.
you honestly feel like when we look at, our movements and our protests and the way we shake ish up these days, do they fail in comparison to how those that came before us really went hard? Like in terms of like they were willing to like, I mean, there were good, powerful people that have records a mile long just because they stood on the front line. Do you think we had that same fervor in our communities today?
I'll take that one. You want to go first, Ski? Oh, he said no.
The reason is, and I'm sorry, you just you struck a chord with me, Kev, and we are so forgetful. And we have such a short attention span. I was in Europe not too long ago before this COVID started, and people were in Paris burning the city because gas prices went too high. Gas prices, not because people were killing them. Gas price, and I mean burning the city. All right. And here in the U.S., when it comes to us, we protest, we do the IG thing, and 6 weeks from now. Everyone's like, I forgot it. We back on, what Beyonce doing, what Jay doing, those things. I think there's a little more attention now because it's COVID and everyone's locked in. So hopefully that brings people to focus on it longer. But yeah, our attention span is just way too short. Sorry. So go ahead and jump in there, brother.
Nah, you gave me the handoff, B. We running down the court now, the pass, man. So the one thing I often try not to do is try to do comparisons with the ancestors in the movement to now, just for a lot of reasons, personal. But for me, I feel like I often, and I said this earlier in the interview today, I tell my students, what are you willing to sacrifice to fight against social injustices? What are you willing? Sometimes they'll say their cell or social media, food, their comfortability. And I always tell them, you know what I sacrificed initially? My cushy federal government gig making 6 figures because I wanted to teach at an HBCU. I wanted to come back home. And I wanted to inspire and motivate students. Now, I still do it rather well financially because I know how to hustle from Brooklyn. But that and I worked in an environment where it was kind of, that I saw firsthand how they were treating our people because I worked in a criminal justice environment, obviously. And I was like, that's not my purpose. That's not my passion. What am I willing to sacrifice, man? I tell my family all the time, man, you guys know I'm vocal. They know I'm vocal. The city knows I'm vocal. My school, the one thing that I always regretted, well, not regretted, but I wished that I would have been afforded the opportunity to go back home. But for me, New York, I have mixed feelings, particularly what's going on now. But, for me, that's why I'm so indebted to the east side of Winston-Salem. That's, the east side is the hood side, I guess. And that's why I do all my activism, and I take my kids over there, or my young men rather, and just expose them to that. But to Skier's point, man, jokers are soft. Jokers want to buy the new J's. Jokers want to, they want to floss on Instagram, and they want likes and all that. Nah, they're not really about that life, because if they were, this stuff wouldn't keep happening.
All right, so here's another question. How do we show up in our workspaces, right? Do you find that we are forced to separate this portion of our lives? Any of us are part of spaces where you're able to kind of lean in and have these tough conversations? Or do you find that, like, some of us, we have these really deep thoughts and these emotions and these considerations with regards to what's going on in the world, but then we have to take that hat off when we're walking into the workplace? I want to talk briefly about that and just really want to get your thoughts on having to deal with having to not be able to breathe properly because the air is so heavy, but yet not being able to afford to deviate from the regular schedule program.
Go ahead, Jay.
I'm one to and I'm a little different. I tend to go to work and focus on my business and get out. So I typically don't talk too much about personal things, like in general. I got a job to do. I'm gonna focus on it. But when it comes to sharing different things that might be happening or overhearing conversations, that's when I'll get involved, right? If I hear somebody misspeaking or speaking on something in my area, then I'll speak up and have conversations. And I realize that I'm very careful with my words, the words that I choose and who I choose to share with. We can all go on social media or go blasting stuff, but it's like I always start with the end in mind. If I say this, what is that going to produce? I always look at the fruit that I want to produce. And my influence is very important to me. So if I hear somebody talking a little bit reckless in a group and stuff, some people they get hyped when they're around coworkers and they get a little cohort going and they talking smack right with each other. That's probably not the moment to get involved, right? Because they feeling themselves, they pounding on their chest. I might catch that person on the side and have a one-on-one conversation. A lot of times I find that people's opinions are very different when you get them one-on-one, or they respond a little bit differently. And so that's kind of like where we are with social media, is like people will get behind waves of thought and conversations and likes and everything, and it's like, oh, people like that, so you just continue to do what people like, because we live in such a entertainment-filled society, right? And so when it comes to having these conversations in the workplace, I always think about what fruit is it going to produce? If I can help inform a coworker because they're misinformed, I want to do that. But you got to be real strategic about having those conversations and the timing of it.
Listen. I agree with that. I don't have a problem people being, the spook that sat by the door. If that's your flavor, that's cool. I'm more of a, Donnie Hathaway, be real black for me type of guy. You know what I'm saying? And what I mean by that is, anybody who's been in a corporate room with me, it's no mistaking where I stand on the issues. I be real black with folks, and I don't care that they're medical doctors and they're lawyers. I be real black with them. What do I mean by that? I mean that when we are talking about things that are going to affect our community, I owe it to everybody who has ever sacrificed for me. When I was in New York and Philly and North Carolina, wherever I was in any space, I owe it to be the black voice in all of those spaces. I cannot be quiet, and I will not be silenced. And that's what it means to sacrifice, right? And I'm not saying you should mess up your paper, but I think that people need to stop being husky on the Facebook and on Twitter. Be husky when it really counts. You know what I'm saying? And be the voice for somebody. Stand up for the janitor in your space, not just the your coworkers that are gonna be just fine if with making their whatever salary. Who's standing up for the janitor, making sure that they're straight? Right. Who's talking to them on a daily basis and making sure that who's talking to the people who are in the cafeteria and making sure that they're straight and making sure that their negotiations are going correct. If they getting time and stuff like that, when vacation comes around. You owe it to everybody in the spaces where you are to be real Black for them. And that's what it means to sacrifice. Yeah, you got to sacrifice. You got to be willing to sacrifice your life at some point. I don't care what nobody said. You got to be willing to do it. And you can either look your son or daughter in the eye and get that strength then, but you can get it for other reasons. I'm not knocking anybody's hustle. But what I mean is when we're in these spaces and we're around folk and they want us to be the quiet one, they in corporate America, I'm gonna tell you a little secret. They don't like having, when I say people do not get real uncomfortable when there's 2 or 3 of us in the same room. They get real uncomfortable in those spaces. And
6 of us.
And when I say they, I don't mean the white folk.
That's right. You're right. It ain't just them.
Right.
It's the
Listen,
y'all gonna have me talking.
Come on, speak it up.
It's the skin folk. It's the ones who think that they the only ones. They can be the only one in a given space, and you messing up the vibe in the room because you being too Black for them, or you talking about issues that are making people uncomfortable, and it's messing up the golf game they're gonna have later on. I don't believe in being quiet. That's not the guys I hang around. That's not the women I hang around. I hang around strong-minded people because I need you to keep sharpening my steel. And sometimes I might fall back a little bit and be, I need that type of energy. And as soon as we start losing that energy and we start trying to be the nice one and the genteel one in the room, we have lost everything. Everything is done. You know what I'm saying? So
can I chime in real quick? So my approach has been slightly different. I experienced once I graduated Lincoln, I moved down here to Maryland from Philly. I'm thinking like life is great. Few years into my career, I went on an interview and I had locks at the time. And this was well past 10 years ago. I sat down, sitting in front of a quadre or four individuals doing an interview for a contract. First question, they said, "What's up, man?" And I'm like, "What? What's up?" And tried to talk like college. It was in March. I remember it was March Madness. So who's your team in March Madness? Oh, time out. Like I'm a software engineer. Let's talk technology. You're here to interview me.
He said I got a good ass job.
Give me fluff. And at that moment, I said, "Oh, just because I made it this far doesn't mean I made it."
Wow.
And in my approach, and I work in a predominantly white space. I'm usually the only brown face in the room with a bunch of software engineers who had computers growing up and the whole nine. Like, I've been programming since I was 8. I'm like, hey, I didn't get a computer until I went to college. I was at Lincoln. Like, the computer lab was where I did my projects.
Yeah.
So we learning that I don't have to be silent, but I'm always tactful about how I move in those spaces. And for me, the blessing has been I pay attention, I look around in the room, and then I realize, okay, who can I have certain conversations with? Because there are certain people who want to engage, but the assumption always for me is, oh, you grew up around drugs and guns? Like, yeah, I'm from the city. Like, I'm from Philly. Like, let's be clear. And one thing that jumped out, I remember clearly, we were talking about some injustices in one of my previous offices, and someone made the comment like, "But Charles, you're Oreo," and I'm like, "What does that mean?" Wow. Like you're black on the outside, but like you're white on the inside.
Wow.
And I was like, "Huh?" And I began to have conversations about real life experiences, and I think a lot of people, for us professionals, once we get into that space, their assumption is, oh, you grew up not living in poverty. So you have no context of what police brutality is. You have no context of what injustice is because you probably went to a suburban school and you had a car when you were 16. Like, no, I didn't have any of that. But I've made it this far. So for me, I move tactfully, and then I open once the door is cracked. Let's have these conversations. because I want to see you uncomfortable and have a genuine experience with an African American who grew up in the places that you watch on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, I'm not like going in Black Power, but
No,
I'm,
and I don't want anybody to take. I don't want anybody to take from what I said that you got to go in and you got to wear all black and you got to have the kufi or the not the dashiki and everything. I'm not saying that. And in fact, I don't believe in performance. That to me is performance art.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? What I'm talking about, when you're in spaces, you will have opportunities. It'll come up. It may be one opportunity your whole life, but it'll come up. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You will be in a space where you are the Black voice, and there's something in the back of your head. And I'm so glad that I'm surrounded by Black women at all times, because Black women will keep it 1,000 with you, and they're gonna look over at you and they're gonna give you that look, and they're gonna be like, "What you gonna say?" And I mean, if that doesn't get your spine right, there's something wrong with you. You know what I'm saying? If a sister look at you and that don't make sure, and that don't reaffirm your spine, get you tight, and the next words out your mouth is the honest to God truth as a Black man, there's something wrong with you, because there is a truth that comes from looking at each other, and sisters have been the ones who have been keeping Black men on the path for the longest. And that's because there is a difference between the ability to deal with pain that Black women have. Black women have dealt with an injustice that goes far beyond what we've known, and that maturity comes from a place of both pain, but also dealing with it in a way that's healthy, so that I can be a support system for my family. When you get that adult type of way of dealing with your that injustice and that environmental insult, that's a maturity that a lot of folks don't have. And as Black men, we're not able to do that. For whatever reason, we think that space is not something that we can get with, and that's where a lot of the unhealthy behavior comes from. It comes from an ability to not be able to talk about, what it is that's hurting you. We talk about slavery, right? We talk about rape and how the Black woman was raped on a daily basis. Do you really think that the Black man wasn't getting raped out there? Is that what you think?
Yeah,
is that what you think? Is that but we can't deal with that type of trauma. We've been keeping that trauma to ourselves for centuries, and it's in our genes now.
Yeah,
that's the stuff we got to heal from injustices from 400 years ago. We're still healing from that.
Jack, I see you. But
listen.
Hear me out.
Yeah,
we've been on for an hour and a half. I would love to just do 2 hours flat, which is a half an hour over what I anticipated. Do you all have that extra half an hour?
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah, as long as people aren't leaving, we're good.
No. Listen, gotta have good Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
We know.
Yes, you do.
We know. Oh, good idea.
Speaking of, where's Isaiah?
Yeah.
Hey, Jack.
You mean the IT department?
Are we done? Are we finished?
With the blue shirt.
All right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Doc, I'm gonna let you make a comment. Then, just like the current pandemic that we're in, we need a vaccine, right? So we can talk for 3 hours straight, but I want to shift gears on what we need to do and where the action occurs. All right. So Jack, make your statement, then we're gonna switch gears.
Yeah, just real quick, just to finish out the last sequence of questions. I'm blessed. I'm at a HBCU, so but I've worked in white and Black spaces, obviously. But that's the one thing for me. It's not work. I always joke that I'm there to balance the scales of justice. So it's like I
like it.
Tenure is a great thing. So it's just like when we talk about criminal justice, when we talk about social justice, if you white in the audience, if you Black in the audience, y'all gonna get it. You're gonna get this smoke. But and my thing is, I'm grateful to that, but I'm grateful that I was in those white spaces because that was the training I needed to know how to wiggle. And like you said, we ain't telling nobody to get fired. You got to navigate. You got to be at the table. So for me,
don't compromise. Don't compromise, man.
Hell no.
Be you.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, to that point, Proverbs 21:15. When justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous, but
Yes, sir.
terror to evildoers. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Because Jack gave me the feeling right there. You know.
There you go.
So
Listen,
to segue into Kev's. Oh, I was about to go into
for
your
it.
question. The
You
remedy.
got it, Skid. Go right into it, man.
So I think there's two important things, and we'll see if people agree, right? One is elections is coming, and I know we always talk about the presidential election, but we never really focus enough on local elections. And I'm not talking about your local mayor. I'm talking about your local prosecutors, or like all those little local functions that sort of make the rules for you locally. It's so important to go out and vote for those people because you have a lot of impact on that, right? They win these elections by a few hundred votes. And that can drastically shift how things are being done in your criminal justice system locally, right? If you get caught up on some federal time, that's a whole different ball game. But your state and local level, that's super important, right? So you guys need to go out and vote and encourage other people. Don't just think, oh, I went out and voted and post your sticker on IG. No, take people with you. It's okay to take a day off and go vote. You got time off and you don't got nowhere to go this year. All right. And the second thing,
not everybody. Some people got to go to work.
And then the other part of it is, I'm a big advocate of, financial literacy, right? I think, becoming being literate financially is going to allow you to sort of help you move out of your situation, right? Not saying move out of the hood, but it makes the situation better. Being financially
give us some insight on your background.
So my background is in finance. I've been in finance for the past, God knows, 15 plus years. I work at a hedge fund and I manage billions of dollars across the hedge fund industry.
He's just gonna sprinkle that. He's gonna sprinkle that out there, like
sprinkling billions.
I gotta sprinkle because I the story where I'm about to go. So I want people to understand, right? One thing about the guys at my job, this is when they come to finances. White people, they don't think about what's happening tomorrow, where they're going to get their money from. They just spend it. And I was trying to understand, like, what is this logic? Because for me, it's always been save, and build a foundation. But they have financial security, right? And it allows them to go through their life to the point that Mike said, without that stress and concern, where we have stress from everything. So focus on your finances, do things that can help you out. Stop spending money on just frivolous, Jordans and, the nicest car out there. Create that foundation for your family, show your kids the right way. And that just helps with one less thing you need to think about. And it will change your life. It will put you in a better situation.
Man, that's good. I'm glad you was about save, because I was on the other side of like, I don't like growing up and not having anything. So once I got a little bit of money, I'm spending all the money I had, and I'm spending money I don't have because I'm getting credit cards and all kinds. I'm like, oh, free money, right? I had no education in that area, right? We don't have it. So the financial literacy is big. The way I would answer that question for me is work. I think we need to I told about purpose a lot. That's kind of my heartbeat. Find and master your craft. Like, don't try to be someone else. Try to find and master your purpose, your craft, and that work, your gift will make room for you in different places. Like my background is in project management. And so I've been in financial services, I've been in retail, now I'm in the aerospace engineering area. And not having a background in that, but in that particular industry, but mastering my craft of projects and leadership and all that opened up a door and made room for me. So for me, I'm about if you can find what your purpose is of being here, and you look at your life experiences, you look where you have favor at, you look where doors are opening and what people say about you. What is it that people say about you? What's your reputation? What's your work reputation, right? And you look at all those things and you examine it. Now you got something to take out into the world and make your mark, and that work will open up doors for you.
So let me ask you a question, Jay. Just because we've been in this like kumbaya moment, how does one find purpose? I mean, I hear that a lot in the context of church, like, oh, you know, God has a bigger purpose for your life. Great, cool. Like,
Hold on to your seats,
however
my
old,
brothers.
like, tell me how to find his purpose. It sounds great. Like, if
no, you're about to get your answer.
and I have to listen to you for a half an hour, sounds amazing. I need to walk out of this room and find my purpose. But how do I do that?
Yeah. So I Kev.
You got it.
Okay. So yeah, this ain't spiritual at all. I'll just be honest with you. God does have a purpose for us, and I believe that. I teach my girls that, but the answer going about it isn't as spiritual, right? Once you understand, if you have that ear and you know you're fearfully and wonderfully made, now the question is, okay, what do I do with this fearfully and wonderfully made self that I am? And again, it's very practical stuff. Look at what you do well. Okay? Look at what you do well. Look at what you enjoy doing. It's not always necessarily aligned with what you do well. People say, "Oh, just follow your passion." Sometimes passion don't pay the bills. So,
Yes.
you know, it's hit or miss with that. I think at some point you should enjoy the work that you do, and it should bring satisfaction and joy. But sometimes that's not the way you lead, right? Because you have to lead into something that you have to learn. Learning sometimes is hard because it's a new skill, it's new muscles that you're developing. So look at what comes natural to you, right? What types of things are you good with your hands? Are you good at figuring out things? Are you good at communicating? Good at counseling? Like, you know, are you industrious? Are you creative? Like, look at all those practical things. Look at where you've had successes in your life. If you're young, look at your schoolwork. Look at all that type of stuff. And then as you get older, start to experiment. You know, you start to, okay, I'm gonna take that to the next level. So I think you learn by doing. I think our purpose is discovered over doing. Bible talks about faith and works, you know, going together. And some people think, oh, I'm just gonna have purpose, just believe, you know, but just believe God. But believe God, you have to do something. You got to take some action. So you're gonna believe God, but you got to take steps and you got to explore. And you can't be afraid to fail. That's the big thing. Take some risks, man. Everything in life that's worth going after, you have to be able to take some risks because you will make some mistakes, but you'll learn from that. So to me, the purpose thing is just by life experience, going after something and starting somewhere, right? Don't just wait for opportunities to come to you. Take advantage of the moment.
So thanks for that. And I'm not trying to jack the moderator's task, but I just like to push back a lot. So, Askia, you mentioned financial literacy and voting. What you say?
No, I was. Go ahead. I'm listening.
So I mean, we went to school together. Like, I understand where you're coming from. I like J's. So for me, I had this conversation with my wife. I'm like, yo, you know, I like sneakers. So
I follow
what
your
I'm
sneaker
going to
page.
do is I have my career. Our money goes into this account. But guess what? I'm gonna get a part-time job so I can continue to get my J's, my Air Maxes. Like, so is my approach wrong, or should I take my part-time money also and stack it elsewhere, so on and so forth?
Yeah. So the thing with finances, right, that people get confused. Everyone is like, oh, I need to be debt-free. You know, you don't have to be debt-free, right? You just have to be mindful of how you spend your money as balance, right? You put a little money on this side for your family and for your kids' education or their future. You put a little money over here to make sure your bills are paid. It's all in how you allocate it. The richest people in the world are in debt, right? Jeff Bezos can't go out and just say, hey, in my account, I have $100 billion. No, it's connected to something. A lot of it is just paper, make believe, right? So it's really teaching people not necessarily becoming 100% debt free, but what are you building? What type of assets do you have that you can build? So to give you a prime example, with my mentees, one of the kids said, hey, I have a hard time paying my cell phone bill. I said, cool. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to go buy some Verizon stock, right? Buy enough of it because it pays dividend, right? And then that dividend is going to continue to pay your cell phone bill for the rest of the year. You don't got to worry about that cell phone bill. The dividend is going to come in. And he's like, oh, wow, that makes sense, right? And if the value of the stock appreciates, you're also making some extra money there, right? So it's really finding resources to cover those things, but not foregoing paying your mortgage, paying your rent. So you shouldn't just be unhappy. But the one important part about this, and I want people to understand, COVID-19 has showed us the impact of our dollar, right? Companies are going out of business because they're having 2 or 3 months where they can't operate, right? If we just step back and say, we go stop spending our money for 2 months, we could put any company out of business. And I'm not talking about we, meaning all of us. I'm just talking about the black dollar. If we stop buying Nikes tomorrow and just did it for 3 months, Nike gonna have problems. But Chuck, I'm with you. I went and got me a pair of purple, ones when they was on sale 3 weeks ago because I like my kicks too, right? But I make sure that life insurance is important, right? Making sure that something is left there for the kids before I indulge in the things that I like. And people need to understand that everything you have to put in perspective. If you can't afford a Lamborghini, don't buy a Lamborghini. If you can't afford the gas for that Lamborghini, don't buy it. But if you're a millionaire, then sure, go ahead, ball out. So,
got you.
Yeah.
All right, brothers. So back to the solutions, right? So we've gotten finance, and a few other things. But what other things can we come up with in terms of an actual solution? So does anybody follow S. Lee Merritt, Esquire?
No.
Ever heard of him? Okay. I would follow him on, I'm not sure what his IG handle is, but he gave 3 steps. So I want to throw him out there, but I want us to continue to add on it if at all possible. But the first thing he said was congressional hearing and legislation, right? And he goes on to talk about like congressional hearings and a national task force geared at crafting new bipartisan legislation centered on ending racial violence and increasing police accountability. And I think having this type of conversation and really digging deep and not just talking, because we talk a lot in our community, but really starting to put like the steps in. I think we had a man cave last night with my church and my bishop. He's Bishop Ray Taylor, man. He really concentrated on the fact that we need people, particularly who have the know-how, to be able to start guiding others in the community that all they have is the anger, right? All they had, their bandwidth is, look, I went from anger to now I'm like pissed and I'm ready to fight and I'm ready to burn something down. So for those who don't have the tools necessary to be successful in like fighting the movement, I wanted to share kind of some of the things that he put out there. Present and amplify legislation designed to reduce police violence and increase accountability. The other part, which I really love, is present this case to the United Nations Human Rights Committee. What he puts out there is, if you don't know and you're not savvy enough to understand it, it at least gives you enough information to be able to research it on your own. And so I'm looking at 2 researchers, Mike and Doc, where it's just a part of who you all are. It's a part of your DNA in terms of research. I want to talk about, okay, to Chuck's point. All right, yeah, you can tell me, present a case to the United Human Rights Committee. What does that mean? What's your knowledge on these 2 steps? And whether or not, does it resonate in terms of something that could possibly help us move forward when we talk about real tangible solutions? Because the fact of the matter is that there are some brothers and sisters in our communities that they really don't know what part they can play. They don't know what first steps to make.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the I'm only a bill kind of education on how laws get passed and how legislation gets passed. I mean, there's a place for that. There's a place for legislation that is geared at helping the lives of Black and brown people and poor white folks. There's a place for that. I think that I don't ever want to poo-poo that, because that's how our country operates, right? We operate on these laws. I think that while that, as a practical matter, I don't know how practical that is for people's everyday life. You know, it's
Okay.
it's a lot. You have a lot of things going on in your daily that I'm not sure. You know, pursuing legislation should be one of those one of your focus. That shouldn't be, you know, top 5, but it is something that we need to be educated about. You know, there was a time when we were you know, when segregation was still very much a part of the legal education. You know, where we were being taught in elementary school by doctors and lawyers and stuff like that because they couldn't get jobs doing other stuff. We had excellent, you know, teachers telling us about civics and teaching us about how the country works and how it operates. And we lose a lot of that, right? And we've lost that history. But I mean, my focus is more on the more practical uses of time, and I'm not sure that you can really you know, fit all of that in a given day. We already, you know, working 27 hours a day. You know what I'm saying? And I just don't know where you fit. Oh yeah, and then I'm gonna go get up with the homies and we're gonna you know, draft some legislation. I get it, but you know, it's not.
So when we look, that would be more long term, right? Kind of to Mike's point, we do need legislative changes without a doubt, but we have some more immediate issues that need immediate responses. Now, the criminal justice system, that's why I don't jump, you know, and do backflips when people talk criminal justice reform and you hear everyone, all the pundits on both sides of the aisle talking about what they want to do. Criminal justice is $1 billion industry. And there's no amount of legislation. What does criminal justice mean? It means they need to ensure people are breaking some laws to keep them prisons filled, to keep the halfway houses filled, to keep the courts operational. So I'm not, you know, I'm optimistic, but I am a realist. And that machine is too grand. Now, does that mean we just take it? No, absolutely not. We still fight. Immediately, to Skier's point, we need to vote in on local legislation. And you know, and it's funny he mentions that because here in North Carolina, we deal with a legislative body on a state level that's anti everything with us. You know, schools, HBCUs, Black community, whatever. Now, law enforcement wise, for my brothers, you know, we're in the 6D, North Carolina, South Carolina, they know, but legislatively from North Carolina to South Carolina, this last election cycle, we voted in, I don't know the total number to this moment, but every new police chief or commissioner was Black. And for the males, most of them were fraternal in whatever aspect that was. So we mobilized to get them in office because in policing, it starts from the helm.
Yep.
Our sheriff in Winston-Salem right now is one of my frat brothers, but he was on the news today talking about you're not going to see what you saw in Minneapolis and Winston-Salem, not under my watch. And then the chief, who's an African-American woman assistant, she was like, not on my watch either. Like, it takes leadership on the front end, not when it happens, to talk about, oh, we need to fix it. That's what we're so reactionary.
And Jack, to that point, and to Askia's point, you know, Askia brought up the point where the black dollar is a strong dollar, right? If the black dollar ain't moving, everybody ain't moving, right? That's how you got it. That to me is the practical aspect of what you were talking about, Kev. I don't think we need to be in a room with the homies drafting legislation. What I do think we need to do is be on the phone calling up people and saying, hey, you know, make sure you got some legislation for me. Make sure you got some pressure for me. We gotta start pressuring people, and we gotta start showing that without our vote, you know, everything is shutting down. And that's something that the Democratic Party, you know, you got people out here saying, well, what has the Democratic Party done for you lately? Why don't you vote Republican? That's silly, right? They talk about Republicans, and what do they always say? Well, Frederick Douglass was a Republican. As if you know, the Dixiecrats didn't move from, you know, the Democrats over to the Republican Party like that. They just skipped that whole section when the racist white folks moved over to the Republican Party. We just gonna skip that. So
Yeah, Mike, but they love using Dr. King though. That's their,
that's the one.
That's
the one
they want. That's they want.
That's they want.
So Dr. King is their Rocky Marciano. So my point is that as a community, what we need to be, there was a time where we would mobilize, and we had that, you know, a leader in the church or somebody like that would mobilize us. We don't have that anymore, but we what we do have is we have social media. We have ways of educating ourselves and getting together over important things that are important to us. And that to me is the practical thing. I don't think you need to be out writing legislation, but you do need to be putting pressure on your local people, like the brother said, on your local administrative people. That's the DA. That's the people who are controlling the finances, how your tax dollars are being spent. In Philly, where some of us are, I think a good portion of us are, a lot of your tax dollars go to from the school district, right? Where that's why Philly schools ain't about, you know, the same things as we want them to be, right? I'm not gonna say anything bad about the public school system, but they're not where we want them to be. Those tax dollars go to companies, and what I mean by that is they take major companies in Philadelphia and say, you ain't got to pay no taxes. We're gonna give you a tax break, and that money got to come from somewhere. So where's it gonna come from? It comes from the school district. Mm-hmm. And so every time you root for the Eagles, remember that the Eagles got paid hundreds of millions of dollars in 2010, in 2012. They got paid hundreds of millions of dollars to stay in Philly because they were so scared that the Eagles were going to leave Philadelphia. Now we got championship over here and everything. That's great. That's fantastic. But just remember where that money comes from. When you got Comcast, and Comcast starts talking about things like, oh, this is a partnership with a public and business partnership. Why can't we just do that stuff by ourselves? Why we got to pay Comcast to do things that Dilworth Park and all this stuff? Why we got to pay Comcast to do something that we could do ourselves? You got to think about things like that. New York, you know, where I'm from, think about how those tax dollars are being spent. You know, the way that they get financial industries to stay in New York, that's through tax breaks, and that tax break come from you, the taxpayer. You know what I'm saying? And if you ain't getting services that match your tax dollar, you should be up in arms. You ain't getting your money's worth, and that's the kind of financial literacy I'd like to talk about. Not just the making sure that you got your bank account is straight, and you're not spending money on J's if you can't afford them. I'm all in favor of J. J's is fly. I'm in favor of them, but I'm in favor if you can afford them. But I think financial literacy is also knowing how your city works. Knowing how your town works. Financial literacy is about knowing how the operation around you works. And that's the part where I'm fearful of Black people not knowing. I think Black people can balance a checkbook mostly. You know, they staying in their homes. They know that the money's coming in. They know how to, but I don't know if we know how the city works. I don't know if we talk about that enough, because our school systems are a reflection of our ignorance of how the system works. We should not be letting that go down.
And just
so it'll be the last statement, and then we gotta close out.
Okay. So the theme that I hear is we have to learn to invest, not only the Black dollar, but even with the vote. Like I agree wholeheartedly with everything that's been stated, but do we invest our time to actually look up who we're voting for? Like, why am I voting for this people? Like you have a choice of six judges. I'm gonna just go Malcolm.
Sound Black?
Yeah, Malcolm Turman, Turman, like I went to school with a Turman. He probably Black. Let me just go with that. So we need to.
You laughing? That's real.
It messed you up though, because there's a lot of people named Keisha that you don't, and Jerome that you don't know.
Right.
There's a lot of people
further south you go. Yeah.
And because we look at the name and just make an assumption without putting the investment of our time when we come home, kiss, take time with the spouses, take care of your children, whatever other responsibilities, but understand there's a voting cycle coming up, and I need to make sure that I'm well informed, so I vote for the things that will benefit my community. And I feel like a lot of us just go into it blindly and say, oh yeah, I voted. Like, well, who did you vote? Tell me who you voted for. It was a Jack, a Dr. Jack. He has a PhD, so I mean he's smart. Ferrer, like he sounds like a white guy, so I trust him. a skier, like, you know, we need to we need to be diverse. So I chose a skier guy because I'm assuming he's Muslim, and Mike Henderson, like, oh, I knew his dad from Lincoln. His dad was a swell guy, so I'm gonna go with Mike because his dad was good. And it's like, yo, we don't invest our own time in making sure we're making the proper decisions for our communities, and that's kind of another piece, another layer to the pie or to the cake that we need to focus on.
Let me add to that point real quick about
Absolutely,
so it's about, you know, and I think to that point, the points that were made, I told to this a little bit earlier. We're so entertainment focused in our culture in America, right? You can look at subsets of that all the points that we just made is easier said than done, because what's constantly in our face is lifestyle, is entertainment, is fashion, is all these things that make you feel good. We can get away from the pain by just looking at our phones and getting away and escaping and creating whoever we want to be online, and our lives in shambles is in a wreck. So the education that we need about not just who those people are, but if we put those people in because we know who they are, what is the actual function? What can they actually do in those roles? We don't understand how systems work. We don't understand how money works together and how it ties into government and all these things. So when you look at our society, any great societies over history, and we got some historians and theologians in here, so I'm just going to speak to it loosely. I ain't going to get fact checked. But any societies that have fallen because they move from a place of moving from education and humanity focus and growth into one of arts and entertainment. Rome, Greece, all of these places, because the people start to have a little bit of success and they start to just kind of eat from the fruits of their labor and just enjoy things. And then everything goes to hell and falls apart. And that's where we are. We've turned that corner. Like over the last 50 or plus years, we're just enjoying where we are. And so I think as Black people and as a Black father and husband, I'm trying to get my girls to understand the value again. My heartbeat is work. Going back to work, educating yourself on all the systems of the world and society and how everything works together.
Yo, Jay.
Sir.
I see you, brother, and I love you.
I appreciate that, man. I see you too, Kev.
Hey, Chuck, I love you, good brother.
Love you too, man.
Hey, Mike, I love you, good brother.
I love you, brother. I love all you brothers on this
Yeah,
line.
that's true. Thanks,
Love
Mike,
you,
for
Doc.
making all of us look bad. I love all of you guys.
Jack,
I love you too, man. Hey,
Love
brothers,
you too, man.
Much love, all of y'all, man.
And the crazy thing is, we life is very short, man. I appreciate you all for joining me. We listen. Nobody saw us in the green room, so we have this quick little thing we do on the show. It's 20 questions. So I don't think I'm gonna get to the 20 questions, but I'm gonna randomly ask you a few questions, and this is just so we can kind of take the heaviness out of the air. Man, we just talked for 2 hours, brothers, and it definitely was a deep conversation. Man, I appreciate your friendship, all of you. Jack, if you were jack of all trades, what would you be a master of? It's the one thing in life you'd be a master of.
Well, I'm already doing it, man. I'm a father, man. But if I'm jack of all trades, man, what if? Sheesh. Sheesh. Why you go to me first? Oh man. Hold on, because that invokes that's depth, right, man. Like, yeah, come back to me, man. Let me think of that, man. Because I do a lot of things. Come back to me.
Okay. I got you, Jay. Asia Space, man. It's a baby that's been birthed. Can you give us 30 seconds or less, man, on what Asia Space is?
Yeah, absolutely. Asia Space is a community of professionals who intentionally rise above all work-related challenges to realize greater successes. In a nutshell, I want people to find their purpose. I want people to see their value in workplaces. I want them to rise, and I want them to have increased recognition, opportunities, profits, and overall well-being, right? Talk about the wheel of life and all these different areas that we've touched on. I want people to be happy, healthy, and whole. And so I teach people how to do that through their work. So Ace Your Space coming in June, at Ace Your Space now on all social media platforms.
Nice. Scared. Proudest moment to date.
Just being a father, man. by far, being a father.
No doubt.
Mike and Chuck, this is you're no stranger to this. You guys are super private. I want to know, like, there's value in that, and the reason why I know there's value in it is because I'm dedicating this show to my wife. She's probably one of the most private individuals, so we can be so opposite, but yet we're so compatible. I'm just curious, like, does it come from upbringing? Does it come from just protecting your prospective space? Is it deeper than it's just who you are? Talk to me.
Go ahead, Mike.
Sure.
The philosopher.
So I'm just intentional about the energy around me. I think that you got to be very selective with the, what type of energy you surround yourself with, because ultimately, your thoughts will become your actions. And so, I try to keep a very close watch on who I am around and who I surround myself with. And I just don't have the time to do that with multiple people. I got to keep a fairly tight circle, because I got to make sure that energy is right. When I'm around people I love and I care about, it refuels me. I talk about being around Black women all the time, about being around brothers that have a certain swagger and confidence that I'm used to. I'm not used to being around brothers that don't know who they are and get uncomfortable when they're in spaces. I just don't. I'm not against those people, but I just don't. That's not the energy that I move with. And so I'm just selective with my energy, and that to me is my safe space.
I got to take a moment to just affirm that, brother, because I was taking notes while you was talking, Mike. The allostatic load and all of that. I was like, man, this is good stuff, and I think it's because you understand your capacity, and I think you're very intentional about what you do. So thank you for being that, man. It's been a pleasure, meeting you and listening to you, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate that, bro.
Yeah, I say
1911. Let's go.
Quite honestly, I keep my circles small. Because it gives me, I don't want to say control, but it gives me more peace to understand or to know if I ever fell, these people will be here to pick me up. I know for sure if anything were to go wrong, if I'm wrong, even in my marriage, I mean, you've done it for me, Kev. When I was wrong in my marriage, I need people who aren't going to be like, yo, bro, just chalk it up. Just go ahead, man. Like, divorce is an option. Go ahead, keep on moving on. Now, I need people who want to tell me I'm wrong and pull me up. So when I'm super selective and I'm super private, because it allows me to control that to a certain extent. You let a bunch of people in, and Kev, I would chew you up about this over the years. Like, yo, why'd you let this person come hang out at a barbecue? It's like, yo, it's my daughter's birthday. So what? I don't know him. So if I don't know him, that means he shouldn't be here. Because if y'all brothers are in my space, it's understood that, hey, we can have vulnerable conversations. We can talk about our pros and our cons, the missteps we made in life, and it won't go out of this circle, whether it be male or female. I consider myself a super private person, because if I were to mention something very private and it got out, then I have to make an assessment of everybody. And then that tells me I was a bad judgment of who I let close. So for me, it's a matter of choosing people who will pick me up at my lowest point, regardless of if you agree with my lowest point or you don't agree with my lowest point. You know what's best for my future. So you'll be there to pick me up versus just sitting around watching me, because at that point, we're not friends. We're not even associates. I don't even know why I've let you in. So
appreciate it. Hey, Doc. Yeah. Right, Dr. Manel, talk to me, man. Like, you do a lot, and it's very rare that I'm really drawn to anybody's like social media. I feel like a pair of lips will say anything, and social media is very fleeting. But brother, you've done a lot of good work. I mean, to the point where I was so intrigued that I started reading the research that you had done on criminology. Who makes time for that, right? So for me,
I appreciate
you have a lot of spaces that you operate in. And so in those spaces, I'm just wondering, like, if you had to be known for one thing, what would you say that you've mastered in life out of all the things that you've touched?
Well, to me, that's twofold. The obvious is just to be a good family man. That's most important. All the community stuff is dope, but being a family man is more important. But in using that, the second part of that, just a good steward or a good ambassador, an ambassador of goodwill. Like everything I do to date has been to empower our community, albeit through education, albeit through volunteerism, albeit through mentoring, albeit through anything, through my business, my consulting. It's being a good steward, being an ambassador of goodwill. If it was to be over for me tomorrow, for whatever reason, heaven forbid, I would want people to be like, you know what, Doc really tried to make a change and difference. And for me, that's important. The accolades, the titles, all that stuff never impressed me in the first place. It's a vehicle for me it gives me a platform. The PhD just gave me a platform for folks to listen. And I just love intellectually.
Flex on him, Jack. Flex on him.
Flex on a little bit.
I just like to intellectually destroy the haters because I ultimately proved them wrong. That in spite of my earlier transgressions, we're over here live talking about what's going to make our community better. And there's no greater reward for me.
All right, cool. So 3 more questions.
Dial up.
Sign.
Based
You got a
off of-
sign. Didn't hear you, brother. Start over. Houston. Nope.
No, you muted.
Nope. Type your question, Kev. Chuck, take over.
Sign it up. Chuck, it's your show now.
Right.
Flex on him, Chuck. Nope.
Yeah, just text somebody the questions.
Type your question, man. Type your question.
Type it in the bottom like you did before.
Type.
Yo, this.
Oh, he can't hear either.
He can't even see us, I don't think.
Just type it in the chat. You going down in flames, bro.
You see the live comments they put in AOL.
This would have never happened on Rachel Maddow's show.
Followers are dropping.
Earthlink. They took it way back in.
Let me just say one thing, man. I appreciate y'all candor and your honesty on this thing. It's too many of us who really we got to move and shake in atmospheres and environments that are almost like war zones sometimes. So I appreciate being in a space where I can be around folks that are just good individuals and thoughtful and appreciative and about being healthy. And so I just want to say that I appreciate y'all being in this space. And to all the people who are watching and had questions and everything, we appreciate y'all.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I second that. I definitely agree.
So Kev, you not back, so we go keep going until you get back real quick. One point I just wanted to bring up: if y'all know anyone that's going through any type of legal trouble or future legal trouble, it's important that you tell them, do not take these plea deals. Stay away from a plea deal. Don't take a plea deal. If you got to deal with a public defender, do it. If you can afford an attorney, get one. Stop taking these plea deals. They are not for you. They are not meant to be for you, and they're getting free labor out of you.
Yes, sir.
And Kev, I think we need free labor IT though, because this ain't working for you.
Hey, Kev,
maybe we got free labor IT. That's why it ain't working. Need to hire somebody, fix that man stuff.
Nah, just type it in the chat, Kev. Type the questions in the chat.
Kalisha said, "Don't laugh at him."
Kalisha gonna type it for him.
So let me ask you all this question. What caused you to invest in the Brothers Brunch?
It took me a minute, not necessarily, but for me, because I'm spread thin, boards, obligations. But for me, I love what the Brothers Brunch does, man. Like, I like the concept. It's unique. It takes something that people do regularly, but it incorporates the social justice aspect. So for me, I was drawn to it, man. And Kev, he sold it, man. I mean, but the work was there, man, and I just wanted to be a part of it.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike or Jay or Askia, whoever else.
Yeah, I'm about anything that's about helping our community and got a positive energy to it. I'm about supporting it. So, like you said, I'm spread thin, but at the same time, if I'm not dedicating time towards things that's going to benefit us, what's the point? You know what I'm saying? So I'll support anything that moves. Yeah, we got you. So I'll support whatever, and then if it's coming from somebody who has that good spirit, you got to support. Yeah, we can hear you, bro.
You got the echo though, Kev.
So I'll jump in real quick to Chuck's question. For me, the first thing is you got to support your friends when they're working on something. I remember me and Kev spoke about it. We met at a restaurant right here in Brooklyn, Sweet Chicks, and he was telling me what he was doing. I'm like, dude, like, I so want to see you be successful, and my sincere desire to see you be successful, I'm going to come in and I'm going to support you in any possible way, shape, or form to help you further what you're trying to do. And the fact that it's doing something positive, why not? Right. So that's really what it was about, and seeing just sort of him create this whole platform that's just bringing brothers together and making positive change.
Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Go ahead, Jay.
For me, I've understood the importance of open dialogue with men in matters of the soul. We're real quiet and we're real, we handle our business, especially as black men. We carry the weight on our shoulders of our families or life experiences, etc. So, anything that I can do to help facilitate those conversations, I'm all about. Plus, I'm raising young ladies. So I know what caliber of female that I'm producing out of my house. So I want to help brothers to come up because, the two have to become one, and they got to sharpen each other, right? And this big purpose. So I want to help to empower brothers to be all that they can be, and find their mate and find their place in life.
Cool. Well, I was slow on the uptake. One because I know Kev's personality. Like Kev wants everybody to be included, and for me, I'm like, bro, if I see somebody who's not invested in you, I'm out. Like, so I said back we had conversations before it started. And even when he would go to Philly, go up to New York, he'd be like, hey, Chuck, come on. I'm going up to New York. Just let's make this trip. And I'm like, nah, half of them cats I know from Lincoln, and I know you're not really friends. Like, are they there to just check in with their frat brothers or whatever from the LU days, or are they there to have conversation that's going to actually cause change? So I sat back and I said, bro, you have my support. Go be great. And when he did the community service at the McDonald's house in Delaware, I was like, all right, I can get with this, because I know that we're changing lives, but I want to make sure that I'm investing along with other investors who are willing to make this great, not just make it a social thing. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, oh, Brothers Brunch, let's 20 black brothers, let's put on bow ties and eat some chicken and waffles. Like, all right, that's cool. Like, I can do that with the 6 of you. What are we going to get out of this? So I was slow on the uptake. Like, I was super slow. And he's like, yo, bro, we best friends. And I'm like, you have my support. You want money? How much is the plate? $35? Here. Like, nah, I need your presence. Why?
Real facts. He wrote checks. That's like, all.
Because I wanted to make sure that my investment was as valuable and my time was as valuable as the brothers who were coming there to not just talk and ask how your kids are doing, but actually invest in a conversation and make it good.
No, that's a really good point, because I think when I thought about, because I can only get 6 people on this platform, and I had to think about like who I wanted to. I just wanted a real conversation, right? And I think everybody here, yeah, you don't mince words, and you definitely all the time make sure that you tell me what I need to hear versus what I want to hear. So I appreciate that. And Skia, you know, like I mean, when I think about Haiti and how I was like, look, I have a need for I wanted to get all of these young men in the community soccer sneakers. Skia didn't write on the post. He didn't like, you know, grandstand. He sent me a text and was like, yo, how many pair do you need? And that was it. Like I had all the soccer sneaks. I didn't have to like raise, you know, like I just feel like the support, man, has been unparalleled. So I really appreciate it. Last question of the evening for all of you, and we're just gonna go quickly.
Oh, before you ask your question,
sure.
I saw that question about where the church is located.
Your wife already answered it.
She gave the whole address?
Maybe not.
No, just the city.
8334. And tell her she could type in. Sherry, you can type it in. But 8334 Liberty Road. And that's in Milford Mill, Maryland, 21244. But 8334 Liberty Road. All right, go ahead, bro.
Brothers, I know what you all have on your plates because I study you, right? So other than God, what makes you feel really whole? Real quick questions, if we could start with Jay.
My wife.
Chuck.
Yeah, Sherry definitely holds me down. She's my favor, and without her, I'd probably be living in a 1-bedroom apartment
With a whole bunch of sneaks.
Yeah, with a bunch of sneaks, right.
Yeah.
Now you'd have a roommate because I'll be there with you. Without mine, so I got you. We go half on the rent.
Mike.
Yeah, wife and family, man.
Skia.
Yeah, I would say the wife and the kids, man. It keeps me balanced.
Good stuff, man. Jack.
Definitely the wisdom.
You're gonna look crazy.
Yeah, you know, I know, right? Now, you know, since undergrad to now, man, 24 years, man. So definitely the
That's
wisdom.
good stuff.
Blessings.
And then
Yeah, for real.
my kids, man, they keep me youthful.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Brothers, I said it once and I'll say it again. Thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy your weekend. Yo, you thought it not robbery to spend 2 hours and 22 minutes with your boy. Thank you for holding me accountable. Thanks for always being the brothers that don't just tell me what I want to hear, man, because I get a lot of people that just say, keep doing what you're doing. And not one brother on this platform has ever said that. I love y'all and I appreciate y'all. Have a great evening.
Y'all can.
Yes, sir. You in charge.
Can we do this again? Can we do this again? That's all I'm asking.
Hey, listen.
It's recorded. We need to do this again. All right, go ahead.
Yo, if the people want it, I say we're gonna get the people what they want, man. I think that these conversations are great. I just want to make sure that they're well balanced, right? So we can talk, we can have friendly banter, but we definitely got to talk about solutions and what the next steps are. So if we get back on, we got to jump right in there. I know my boy Jay got that project management spirit. The next time we just gotta like come with that heat. All right. Appreciate y'all, man. Have a great evening. I'm gonna put y'all in the green room if y'all wanna chill for a little bit, but I'm going to take us off the air in 2.5 seconds. All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining us, man. Listen, I'm extremely blessed. I realize that I have a lot of good friends. I've learned some really valuable lessons over the years, man. Just, having certain people in my space that didn't really do me any good. So when it came down to having this conversation, I had to think about the cats that I just wanted at the table. There's only, virtually one person that I really wanted at the table that I couldn't fit in the room. And that's my boy, Brandon McLeod, man. That's my guy. That's my college roommate. So I just want to give him a shout out. But I knew that I didn't have to have him because he's right here at all times. Thank you so much for all the viewers. Thank you for those who have supported all the other gentlemen that was on this stage. I really appreciate y'all. I appreciate the time that you spent with us. This is Food for Thought, powered by the Brothers Brunch. Again, this show was dedicated to my beautiful wife. She keeps me in line when it comes to unconditional love. That's my definition. Love y'all, and I'm out.